And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. So, title of this video is a good one. Selling Pokemon. The good, the bad, the ugly. Because right now I think that's what a lot of people are sort of looking at. It's trying to navigate this market. Because when you think about the Pokemon market, when you think about buying, when you think about selling, the market has changed a lot. And really, we're running into a weird timeline too. A lot of people used to just say, like, when the market changed and, what really changed, and really it changed for the better and it changed for the worse in that 2020 timeline. And a lot of people talked about that as being very transitory in the sense that no way that a lot of that stuff is going to ever be repeatable. But we've seen, like, little tidbits of that market have definitely been repeatable. And what I mean by repeatable is there was always times in the past where certain products were really scarce, but you always seem to have a chance to get those later. And when the crazy hype of 2020 happened, everybody said, give it time. Eventually, product will be on the shelves again. And that was true. You could go into your local Walmarts and Targets and Best Buys and whatever, and there's product on the shelf today. But then you could also have something at the exact time when you can go into any store and at least see product on the shelves. It might not be that Evolving Skies pack you want or that Cosmic Eclipse or that Team Up pack, but it's going to be probably the most modern set and it's going to be readily available if you want it. But then we'll still see like a crazy promo happen, like a Van Gogh Pikachu. And when a Van Gogh Pikachu releases, even after all the quote-unquote hype has died, you can still see a card like that do crazy things. So, even though you have good parts of the hobby, and then you got the bad parts of the hobby, and then you still have, like, the ugly parts of the hobby, like the scalping and the craziness that goes on for certain products, it's still there. But it's been really weird, like I mentioned, because 2020 at the time was only, again, transitory. It was just a couple years ago. But now, as we move further and further from that timeline, we're getting close to the middle of 2024 now. We are close to 4.5 years since that craziness really was happening. Well, or even if it's not 4.5, let's just say between 4 and 3 years away. That is a long time. And I like to talk about this because I think it's important because you always need to keep perspective. Pre-2020, if you were in the hobby for 4 years, that was a long time. That brings you back to the Pokemon Go boom. There was a lot of people enter the hobby in that 2016 timeline, and a lot of them entered because of Pokemon Go, and the trading cards, while they were still sought after, was an afterthought. And yes, we definitely saw a spike in demand that happened in 2016. There is absolutely no denying that, but it wasn't anything close to what we saw in 2020. So the people that got in 2016 and were around when the craziness happened in 2020, they were very well established people. And the same way as people that came back in 2016 were established in 2020. In 2016, when people came back 4 years before that, in 2012, by the time 2016 came rolling through, those 4 years, people were super well established by 2016. And it's that, I don't know why there's like certain timelines that people become well established, but it seems like the 4 years is a good baseline. Every person is going to be different. No one person is the same. Like, what is going to be a good baseline time in the hobby that's going to help you? But I think that 4-year time is important because a lot of things happen in 4 years' time. You're usually going to see booms, you're going to see busts, you're going to see periods of stagnation, but more importantly, you're just going to get a better feel for the overall market. There's never been a 4-year period like we've just gone through. And I've said it. The people that started in 2020 and here they are today still collecting in 2024, the way those people are now, call them seasoned veterans in this hobby, is wild. There's still people, still to this day, who are entering in the hobby every day, every month. And I'll see people in comment section saying, I just got back into the hobby a month ago. And I always look at those comments now and I'm like, where were you? Where were you when all the craziness is happening? But that's this weird thing that's happening in Pokemon. So this is really part of that. When I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, this is still that good part. The good part is you still have new people coming in the hobby. And when it comes to that selling aspect, which is the first part of this video, selling Pokemon, the good, the bad, the ugly, when you're selling to people that are newer into the hobby, I promise you that selling is going to be much easier. But now the bad part of that is it does feel that there's less and less of the newer buyer coming in, and people might want to hear like, oh, new buyer, selling to new buyer, it instantly means you're taking advantage of that buyer. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think when a new person comes into the hobby, they just haven't really set like defined collection goals yet. Or when you enter back into this hobby, there is so much that has happened in the last 25 years. You imagine you're trying to get back in and figure out what's the difference between WotC and Nintendo and Diamond and Pearl and all, your Heart Gold, Soul Silvers and Black and White and XY and Sun and Moon. And wait, Sun and Moon, and then Sun and Moon was crazy, but then Sword and Shield, but you can't really pick up some Sword and Shield product on the shelves today. Why is everybody talking about Evolving Skies? And then you're trying to deal with Scarlet and Violet, and there's just so much stuff that's hitting you all at once, and that's not even talking about specialty sets. And then people are trying to get in, they're trying to navigate reprints, and now it does appear that there's going to be a 151 reprint. This is this weird thing. Everybody that I know that has distribution, I haven't got like a definitive yes, this 151 reprint is happening. It's all been speculation, but I'm going to be honest. I haven't been like super engaged in the reprint conversation for 151 because I never thought about English Pokemon 151 reprints being a question of if. I just always thought it was a question of when. And if you guys are not new to this channel, you know I've said that on many times. When people ask what's going to get reprinted, I said the set that makes the most sense for Pokemon the reprint right now is 151. So it's not really coming as a surprise to me, but when you talk about reprints, when you talk about a high in demand set like 151, only thing that's going to affect the long term of that product is how much of this stuff is getting reprinted. Are we talking it's just going to be a few like, ETBs, a few of like the booster bundles, and then that's going to kind of be it? Or are they going to go back and do a full sweep of everything? Are we going to see 151 binder collections and poster collections and everything in between? Are we going to see more Zapdos boxes and Alakazam boxes? And then are we just going to see a ton of, individual packs hit the market just because people are cannibalizing down products in order to sell products individually? Because you think about, a Zapdos box, or you think about an Alakazam EX box, when it comes to shipping those, they are a little bit bulkier. And because the price point is lower, the shipping gets a little bit tougher. It's the same way with a booster box, right? You can have a booster box has 36 packs in it. You can ship it, to ship 36 packs, for call it $120 booster box. It's the same cost to ship that $120 booster box as it is to ship one collection box that has 4 modern packs in it, So a lot of people will start to cannibalize those products because they don't want to ship it. And then because of that cannibalization, you see the single pack prices be influenced. And depending on how many of those packs exist, how many get printed by Pokemon, how long does it keep the price of those packs stagnant? Because in order for the sealed product to rise, you really can't have sealed packs selling at like a quarter of the sealed product price. Wow. That has happened. We've never seen it like as drastic. And even going back to a super in-demand main expansion set, I already mentioned Evolving Skies, but we'll mention it again. You got booster boxes. When you break down cost per pack, it's like $20 per pack. When you can pick up the loose packs, it's about $15. So it's about a 75%, opposed to the premium you're going to pay for that sealed booster box. But if you had a ton more Evolving Skies packs hit the market, it is going to have an influence on the market. But the only thing that's happened is there's just so much demand. So it goes back to that selling Pokemon, the good, the bad, the ugly. The good part is you need these new collectors to enter in. Now, the bad part, and I'm starting to see it, I'm going to talk a lot in this video. I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I'm going to talk a lot about what I saw happen at the New Jersey Collecticon, especially like the in-person sales. A lot of the people I was talking to about in-person sales, one, demand, at least from New Jersey, if you lived in a bubble and or maybe not even a bubble, if you just lived in a vacuum and the vacuum you lived in was only how many people were at the New Jersey Collecticon, you would think that Pokemon is the most preposterous, most wild, most hype, most in-demand thing that has ever existed. How many people were at Collecticon in New Jersey? How many people were standing in line? People standing in standing in line for hours. It was wild. The amount of people that were there is unheard of. And perspective, any other period of time in this hobby, to see that many people waiting for an event would be impossible. It wouldn't even be like a realistic thought that you could have that many people with the sole thought and the sole intention to really go into a place just to source and to buy things. Yes, Collecticon still does have their Jason Page concert and whoever the random artist is on the stage playing some song from the 90s. Yeah, I guess there's probably a very small portion of those people are there for those reasons, but the majority of people are there to go to these vendor tables, to source products, to spend money, to buy stuff. That's the good of this hobby. I mean, when you see that, it's almost impossible to be there, to witness it in person, and then to not just leave with just a different perspective of this hobby. Like, there's so many people. There's so many people that are engaging in this on a day-to-day. And, sometimes we do get lost a little bit because I think we are a little more laser focused on a lot of the nuances of the hobby. And shout out to Basic Trainer. See Basic Trainer in the chat. We are in the niches of the niches. It doesn't get much deeper down than where we are. Things we talk about, things we care about, most people don't care about. And that's the truth. Most people will never care about grading. Most people will never grade a card. Most people do not know, the difference between MJ Holdings and Alliance and who stocks Walmart shelves versus Targets versus, your smaller distribution, distribution companies. I don't even have distribution, but I still care about distribution. I still care what is in stock at distribution. What are rumors of reprints? I care about all this stuff. Most people do not care about that stuff, even in the slightest. They have no clue what reprint timelines look like, what stock is at distribution. People do not care what are people paying at distribution. People do not care, oh, this distributor just released some new bundle. You got to buy a certain amount of booster boxes in order to get this product. But the booster boxes that they're releasing in this bundle could potentially have like a temporary pullback on the price of individual sealed booster boxes of certain sets because we're going to see a little bit more supply. Oh, or wait, maybe they didn't bundle it with some crappy auxiliary product. Maybe it was just a free-for-all and people could buy those booster boxes as they will. And then we even could judge by that booster box prices will even be pulled down even harder in the short term. And how big is this? And all these things, the average person doesn't know any of that stuff's happening. They do not care. They just don't. So that's still, I mean, you can look at it however you want, but that's still like a good thing. You don't want the entire hobby to just be so freakishly laser focused on the hobby, but it's amazing, like even releases or certain cards that PSA grades or certain products. One of the things that I was most successful with at New Jersey Collecticon was, I mentioned it, I thought my table was in a relatively bad spot. And let me see, I could do something. Let me see if I could pull up my table. because I mentioned that it's in a bad spot, but I think maybe it would be better if I could kind of give you a little bit of a... I'll try to give you a visual. I'll try to pull it up. Oh, this is going to take a minute. Alright, maybe not. I don't think I'll be able to. Alright, never mind. Trying to give you a visual. I want to show you the table, but one of the things that I was successful with was getting people to come to my table, and a lot of things that I was selling, you know, pretty strong, which have been pretty rough as of recently on like eBay and stuff, was more of those niche products. Niche product being like some of my Uno PSA 10s. So like a card like this. This card hasn't been selling on my eBay. I had it listed on my eBay for $49.99 forever. I had stacks of them. Multiple quantity listings of... There's these Uno decks. There's 4 different color... Because this is the 4. So there's multiple different colors that come. So every Uno deck comes with 1 blue Charizard, 1 green Charizard, 1 red Charizard, and 1 yellow Charizard. So I had multiple of each one of those colors in multiple quantities in PSA 10. And I left that event only with 2 of these. And both of them were the blue ones. Don't ask me why. I think the blue might have been the one that I had the largest quantity of. But I sold multiple of every color. And I only came back with 2 of one color. This is a card that I was not able to sell on my eBay to save my life. They were just stagnant cards. Were not moving for months. I bring them to a convention. I put a $50 price tag on it, which is the same as what my eBay is, $49.99, plus free ship, and I would lose money compared to what I was selling them in person, and they all sold. But why is that? I think it was just because the average consumer was walking up, they're a Charizard collector, they collect PSA 10s, and maybe it was a card that they just didn't even know existed. And I think that is still like... part of the hobby is that you'll have people still entering that are just so new to this space that they don't even know that that card existed. And when they did come across it, it just, you know, you got to keep in mind, it's probably the same way as a lot of you guys go through binders, or you go through collections and you go through a lot of the same vintage cards over and over and over again. How many times have you gone through collections and you just see the same, you know, base set jungle fossil cards page after page after page, and then eventually as you're flipping you just come across some random unseen forces like Banger Hollow, or some Delta Species Hollow, or some, you know, Hidden Legend, or any of like the random Nintendo EX cards. You come across like a Ruby Sapphire Mewtwo EX, or you come across like a EX Dragons, or, you know, secret rare. You come across an EX Sandstorm Aerodactyl, something, you know, because you're just flipping through the page and you see the same shit over and over and over again. And then when you get to one of those cards you just don't see every day, or you get to like EX Dragon and you're flipping through and that's the Rayquaza. Oh my god, like EX Rayquaza, like I don't see this card every day, because you see the same shit all the time. So when you come across a card like that, it stops you in your tracks. You got to think for maybe a lot of these newer collectors that are just getting into the hobby, and all they're seeing is just like all these half art and full art cards. So half art being from WotC all the way until black and white base, until full arts were introduced. You got to keep in mind that's a long period of time where you only had half arts, until finally black and white base came and you got a Reshiram and a Zekrom, and that's your first ever, you know, full art cards. That's a long period of time. And then from black and white base all the way till modern, yeah, you still got these alternative arts, but it's still the same. It's just a full art card opposed to a half art card, and you're new to this hobby and that's all you've ever seen. It's half art cards and full art cards, and then you're walking along a Collecticon, and then all of a sudden you come across an Uno card, or you come across an Old Maid card, and it just stops you in your tracks a little bit, because you recognize, okay, it's graded by PSA, but why have I never seen this card before? Or not only have I never seen this card before, I've never even seen anything like this card before, which is going to be you know, one of the reasons that as of recently, if you guys do not know, Burger King is now grading gold cards. You gotta go back in time and watch some of my lives. I've gone on crazy rants about the Burger King gold cards before, and this is, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. These are real conversations I've had on my channel where I said eventually PSA will grade Burger King gold cards. And if you guys don't know, they were like just like Burger King promos. I have these. Hold on. So at the same time, like, all these Pokeballs came out and all the uncut, like, Burger King sheets, they weren't real. I mean, I guess they're Burger King cards. Man, you could pick up the Burger King sheets in stacks of hundreds. I mean, there's so many Burger King I really hate to use the word uncut sheets, but I guess that's what they are. And then the question of, do you get the perforated ones or do you have the straight edge Burger King cards? Like, this is where you really get into the niches too. But at the same time, you could also pick up like the 23 karat gold plated Charizard, Pikachu, Poliwhirl. What else is there? There's like 7 or 8 of them. But PSA is now grading those. Those are cards that for years, I mean literally since more or less the inception of modern Pokemon for English as we know. I mean, Burger King promos and Burger King releases came out in 99. It coincides with the same timeline of just, you know, base set being released to North America is 99. Those Burger King gold cards have more or less stayed stagnant in price for greater than 2 decades. But now, the fact that PSA is going to grade those, the fact that they're going to take that card and they're going to encapsulate it between 2 other pieces of plastic, watch what is going to happen. The prices for those real early Burger King Charizards in a 9 are going to go for astronomical prices. That's just the world we live in. There is no hiding from it. People that knew those cards existed for the last 2.5 decades who never wanted them, now, because PSA is grading them, they'll want them. You don't believe me? I bet you can go on eBay right now and just search sold listings, and I'm sure there's a shitload of people buying those Burger King gold cards up off of eBay, picking up any single auction they can, any single buy it now, because now they're speculating on these cards. It's just a funny thing. It's a funny way how this always happens. This is as Pokemon as it gets. But that's the thing too. But, you know, it's part of the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, part of the bad part is what I was trying to get to earlier in the live, where I was talking about that, 2020 to 2024. You got people now that have been in the hobby for 4 years, and they become like battle hardened. While we're still getting those new people, which I mentioned, it doesn't seem to be I shouldn't say it doesn't seem. It definitely is not the influx happening right now as it was in 2020. There's not nearly that sort of influx. So the bad part of that is the people are just becoming more seasoned collectors, more seasoned buyers. They're understanding value of stuff way more. They're understanding what true rarity and true scarcity is way more. But then you also have people so a lot of like the more vintage, mid-era, older stuff is starting to stagnate because people are they know what they want. Luckily, one thing about Pokemon that never changes, I don't care if it's in 99, the most modern thing sells. I don't care if it's in 2009, the most modern thing sells. You do not believe me? Feel free to go on the Wayback Machine, go on Hills Wholesale Gaming, go for any month of any year, just click on a random, type in the Pokemon part of Hills Wholesale Gaming on your Wayback Machine, go click on their listings, and I promise you, whatever the most modern set is, will always be the set that has the highest dollar amount. It has always been the same. The fact that some people out there say people love modern, that is the biggest farce ever. People have always loved the most modern, most current, most newest set. That was the same in 99, as 2009, as 2019, as it is today. With Twilight Masquerade, which at the time of recording this video, Shrouded Fable, the specialty set, has even officially been released. Twilight Masquerade is the most current, most modern set, and you know what the most expensive, most current, most hype modern set for the most, and when I say modern set, I'm talking Scarlet and Violet era card. It is the Greninja. That Greninja is in the most current, most modern, most newest, most currently released set in Twilight Masquerade. That will never change. So whether you think that is good, whether you think that is bad, that is just the ugly part of this hobby. The ugly part is the moderner the better. It's always been that way. It will never change. Now, the question is, will that continue? I think a lot of people are looking at the Greninja. People are really irrationally looking at Twilight Masquerade, really disliking it as a set, and I think a lot of that anger is unjustified. I think because people are seeing the Greninja prices and they're really, really doing their best to downplay that. Any chance that they get to say the Greninja prices don't make sense, they shouldn't be this high, none of that is justified. I think Twilight Masquerade is the strongest of all the Sword and Shield main expansion sets. It's pretty clear that a lot of people love Greninja. I think a lot of people are coming off of Charizard fatigue. I think a lot of people are coming off of very mediocre chases where people were really having to go down the line to find something great. A great example would be Paldea Evolved. You think about that Magikarp. That Magikarp is not some crazy hyper secret rare, crazy hard pull rate. It's just a non-textured Magikarp card. But the reason why is people enjoyed that card and people were really waiting for that big chase. And coupled with the fact that, it had to be hard to pull again. That was one of the things that really hurt Obsidian Flames. One, a lot of people were having Charizard burnout. Whether you think that is a real thing or not, I think it does have a little bit of a factor that people were just tired of that Charizard chase, set after set after set, just release after release after release. Obsidian Flames, and then you got the 151. It's Charizard. It's always Charizard. Until eventually you got a big fan favorite Pokemon in a very, very tough card to pull. I've seen a lot of people open a shitload of Twilight Masquerade at this point, and that Greninja card has eluded a lot of people. And it appears that the pull rates for Twilight Masquerade is one of the harder pull rates of any sets we've seen. And then you couple it with the fact that the PSA Gem Mint 10 rate is floating less than 40% right now, meaning, that is low. I mean, we're talking going back. We got to go back in time a little while to where Gem Mint 10 rates were so low. You think about another crazy hype card like the Moonbreon. The PSA 10 rate is close to 80%, meaning blind. And trust me, a lot of people blindly send in their Moonbreon. They get them. So you're more or less blindly sending in Moonbreons with Evolving Skies print quality. You're still looking at around an 80%. That you're going to get a 10. This Greninja from Twilight Masquerade, you blindly send in 10, you're looking at about a 30 to 4, you're looking between 3 to 4 of those cards. 30 to 40% 10 rate's going to come back. It's rough. I mean, you think back on, there's a lot of sets like that. You don't got to go too far back. You just go back to Burning Shadows. I know it's a set I bring up all the time, but it's the truth. The Burning Shadows print quality, that 10 rate, there was a reason why that hyper rare Charizard, well, there's a couple reasons, but that is one of the reasons that hyper rare Charizard in a 10 always held such a crazy premium. And you could even go to a set much later and talk about Evolutions. There's a reason the Evolutions PSA 10 Charizard holds such a crazy premium over the 9. I know I mentioned this on a video or two back, but it's important that you bring back and you hammer down this fact, because in this hobby, history has this funny way to constantly repeat itself over and over and over again. And that is a lot of the shit we're just seeing play out right now. So, one of the things about history repeating itself is when you talk about selling Pokemon, the good, the bad, the ugly, you gotta make sure you are grading and trying to sell what is in the highest demand. The low demand, low liquidity stuff is going to be really, really tough to move right now. And especially with increased selling pressure because you have more sellers in the market. I know I'm going to start repeating myself, but it is important to always put in perspective. Now, at any time of any day on eBay, you could go on, you could find multiple sellers selling the same card. Other periods of time in this hobby, that wasn't a factor, especially when you're talking graded. It was very, very tough to find other sellers of your card in the same grade. But now, it's just so commonplace. But that goes now to the good, because you at least have enough demand on the secondary market to still keep a lot of this prices high for a lot of these cards. You know, I talked about that Greninja, but when you go and you look at sales, yeah, I mean, we got that card in the last 2-3 days, you know, settling between $500 to $600 and a 10. That is a very, very strong price for that card to continue hitting after a lot of these cards are continuing to hit the market. Because, sure, it's easy to always talk about the outlier, first to market, rush to graded plays. Yeah, that card will sell for a premium, what seems like all the time. But eventually, as that supply continues to hit the market, you know, it's fascinating to see, well, where is the demand truly for some of these cards? And a lot of these modern cards, they actually start to go up because the demand is so strong. I think people are just way too quick to pass these cards off as just, oh, this is just a blip in the radar. These cards are not like able to be, or sorry, these prices are not strong enough to be held. This is just like irrational FOMO. But you think about it, even like big chases of Sword and Shield. Sure, it's easy to point to the Moonbreon. That's an easy one. But look at like still other hype cards like that Garantina V from Lost Origins. That card at release in a PSA 9 was selling for like $300. And that is now that card raw sells for higher than that price. Meaning that Garantina card kept ticking up even after all the crazy first to market plays happen, even after a bunch of those cards continue to hit the market, even during the crazy rip period while Lost Origin was still actively being ripped. And not to say it's not still actively being ripped today, it's just as we pull further away from these, you know, sets, the packs that are ripped do get less and less every day. We are still a ton of that stuff is still being open, but the fact that we're seeing such strong buying pressure for a lot of these cards, you know, really shows the strength of this market. And, you know, one of the things that happens too is it's almost counterintuitive, where a lot of people want to say, well, the first to market plays are where the highest prices, you know, happen, and then you just have a huge supply that hits the market, and then that supply is going to be enough supply to keep that price down for the long term. But what's happening is, even though we're seeing large influxes of cards right at release, and yeah, we're seeing temporary prices, the supply is being eaten up so fast that when these cards start to trickle onto the market slower and slower, even while talking about modern, the demand is just so strong that it eats these prices up like crazy. Lost Origin Garantina is a great example. I'll be very, very curious what happens with this Greninja when Twilight Masquerade is not the most current, most ultra, most modern set being open, and when supply of these cards stop hitting the market at this crazy, crazy rate they're hitting. You know, and when you talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, this is all three, is pop reports. The ugly is that there's a ton of these cards being graded. The bad is that if all those cards hit the market at one time, prices of any 10,000 pop PSA 10 card, if they're all hit the market on the same day, is going to crush the market. But the good part of that conversation is the fact that you could have some modern chases, Moonbreon, where you could have 10, 15,000 of those cards exist in a PSA 10. But when you look at how many of these cards are transacting on a day-to-day, yeah, in maybe at a Collecticon, a ton of those cards are transacting. But when you look at, like, okay, well, let's look at eBay. Let's look at PWCC. There will always be one of those cards being sold, but well, how much is on the market? You know, when you take into account 10,000, 15,000 of these exist in a 10, and then you actually look at the sales, you go, even though a ton of these cards exist, you know, there's not a lot of sales of them because a lot of people aren't selling. And that is the good. And one of the things I talk about is one of the reasons that that is allowed to exist. It's not just a demand thing. I promise you, from the most bottom of my heart and the most truthful place I could bring this from, I know for 100% certainty that there's a lot of people out there sitting on more than just one Moonbryon. There's a lot of people. In fact, there's a lot of people sitting on a lot of Moonbryons because they're really speculating on Moonbryons. But the only reason that they're speculating is because of the thing that I talk about all the time, is consumer confidence. The consumer confidence that exists in Pokemon right now is wild. You know, before I went live, I was reading up in the chat, and somebody was talking about One Piece and OP5. They were asking if I picked up OP5 off TCG Player. Booster boxes were trickling on. Like, there was a couple sellers trickling like 3 or 4 boxes at a time. It was like they were like weirdly staggering how many they were sending on the TCG Player. There was a ton of demand. People were gobbling them up like when they were hidden, and it happened within like a few hour timeline. It was weird. I did know it was happening. Did I buy any One Piece? No. But like, one of the things that hurt One Piece like temporarily was they lost a lot of consumer confidence in the reprints. But luckily, even something like One Piece, it does look like maybe the consumer confidence is bearing back into One Piece. So that will be interesting to look at. But I just don't know the One Piece market enough. But one of the things that helps Pokemon along so well is that there is just crazy consumer confidence, you know, and luckily Pokemon hasn't broken that consumer confidence at a unrepairable lengths yet. There have definitely been consumer confidence that have been broken in the past. When you think about XY and you hear about the Rudy bathrooms, like, those are all real times in the hobby. And a lot of the reasons that those factors are even able to play out was that consumer confidence was lost. And when you talk about consumer confidence being lost, you really talk about consumer confidence being lost in modern product. There is a conversation to be had with a lot of those products and really like dive into like the actual logistics of maybe why some of this stuff happened. You know, people talk about the Roaring Skies, and we can do it. We can get into the logistics, and we can steel man and we can straw man every single product. Like, you know, you talk about the Roaring Skies, and well, why did Roaring Skies go up crazy? Well, you know, that Shaman being a super playable card, you know, being super high demand, getting later to the end of the run, and Pokemon going out of their way and saying they weren't going to reprint Roaring Skies, and then they did say it. But like, one of the reasons that booster box crashed so hard is, you could say, well, because the playability of that card had dried up, because even the Shaman, a lot of people said, oh, well, the Shaman was only ever released in the booster boxes, so there was demand for the playability. But that card also did get a reprint in a collection box too, so I don't really understand. So there wasn't the need for the playability. When you looked at Roaring Skies, it wasn't a great set, so that just kind of has this weird place, and it stands alone. And then, you know, Steam Siege, stuff like that. Steam Siege, Fates Collide, relatively weak sets, you know, towards that later block. Breakthrough, Breakpoint, again, you could say what you want about these sets, they were not great. And then the problem you could look at, like, especially set like Generations, which came towards the tail end of XY, and then be like, well, what about Generations? Well, why did Generations crash down? Why did Generations at release? Because don't forget, at release, Generations packs were very expensive, like $8 per pack. A lot of people made a lot of money in Generations at release. You know why? Because demand was there. But then what happened? Generations, while it was still a good set, had crazy high demand. You know, the mythical collection boxes. The mythical collection boxes were like a wave of 12 different mythical collection boxes that came out, and each one of those mythical collection boxes came out one per month. That means 12 months of guaranteed supply of a product, and 12 months with guaranteed pumping supply through and continuing to influx more and more packs onto the market. Of course, there is going to be like a very, very temporary pull down in the price of all that. And a lot of those mythical collection boxes, a lot of those generation collection boxes, the same way as I talked earlier in today's video, it's easier to move through a booster box because it's going to cost you the same price to ship a booster box as it is some random box that has 4 or 3 packs. And then with the mythical collection boxes, it was 3 packs a generation, so people had to cannibalize down these products. That's what happened. That's one of the things that Rudy had to do. He had a lot of collection boxes. All his packs didn't come from booster boxes. All of Rudy's famous Pokemon bathroom, all those packs came from collection boxes. So Rudy broke all those down, but he wasn't the only one to do that. So everyone broke down this product. Everybody was trying to sell loose pack lots, and because the loose pack lots were just hitting the market at such crazy speeds, at such crazy velocities, at such crazy masses of these packs, it just brought down prices. So you can talk about the history of all this stuff, and you can look at it in a negative way, and you can look at this stuff in a positive way, but I think it is important to at least put yourself in the moment and really understand, like, well, what was going on. And especially when you start to talk about the tail end of XY too, and you start to talk about that evolutions timeline, you are in that 2016 kind of crazy bubble, which was Pokemon Go. And like I said, Pokemon Go was a video game, well, an app for your phone, but there was a trickle over effect. But Pokemon, they reprinted a lot of this stuff, and they really turned the printers on burr mode. So that's why when you come across XY sets, what are the XY sets that you come across? It's just what I just said. It's your breakthroughs, your breakpoints, your Fates Collide, your Steam Siege, your evolutions. Those are, like, out of all the XY packs you're going to see. Like, hold on. Look, here's a stack of breakpoint blister packs. There's a reason why you could hold up a stack of breakpoint blister packs in a hand, but you can't hold up a stack of these. Why can you not hold up like a handful of these? Well, because these just came earlier along in the XY timeline. That's why when you look at XY base, even though XY base was printed a lot, XY base was in a ton of products, especially when you think about it, like a lot of tins and stuff. But when you think about those early sets of XY, and really when you talk about the big, like, heavy hitter sets, your Flash Fires, your Phantom Forces. Well, what helped those sets, like, become as expensive as they are? XY, most expensive booster box in all of, Flash Fire, most expensive booster box in all of XY. Phantom Forces, second most expensive booster box in all of XY. XY base, when you just look at the cards that are in XY base, you got the full art Venusaur, you got the full art Blastoise. You're not talking about, like, these knockout craziest best set ever, but it just comes to a rarity and scarcity factor, because when you look at print numbers for early XY stuff and then you go towards that end, that later block of XY, you go, oh, I get it. When it comes to quantities, the quantity of Flash Fire is nowhere near the quantity of Breakpoint. The quantity of Phantom Forces is nowhere near the quantity of Evolutions. And it's because of this sheer amount that Pokemon was printing of these sets, it crushed the prices in the short term for a lot of that stuff. And even sets like Primal Clash, which very, very lackluster sets. I think, I got... Yes. Look, I even got some Primal Clash blisters. Even Primal Clash, like those mid-era XYs before you get to the craziness, but like even those, like you could just kind of put it in an order. I brought out 3 blisters. Rare, rarer, super common. And it's just that end of that timeline. So, like, when Rudy talks about the Rudy bathroom, you have to really understand the timeline that was. And what we came off of, what the, like, feeling was in the hobby, where we have a lot of people hopped in for Pokemon Go. Pokemon print ramped up all the printers. A lot of this stuff really, really went down temporarily. And then, unfortunately, Pokemon, when you look at even moving into Sun and Moon was not like this crazy timeline of super hype, especially at the beginning. When you're looking at sets that even still to this day, people don't really love opening. When you think about Sun and Moon base, again, Sun and Moon base printed to absolutely crazy amounts, but Guardians Rising and Burning Shadows and stuff like that, like there's a reason why. And yes, the Burning Shadows with the Charizard chase, and then Ultra Prism and stuff like that, like our Crimson Invasion, even like there is a tough timeline. Well, really, when you think about it, Sun and Moon base, Guardians Rising, Crimson Invasion, Burning Shadows, Ultra Prism got a real late reprint. Celestial Storm, Lost Thunder, like those, there were some middle sets that didn't really get like huge reprints because Ultra Prism had that really weird reprint where a set like Celestial Storm didn't really get booster box reprints. Same thing with Lost Thunder, but then like you're calling that middle Sun and Moon block, your Lost Thunder, Celestial Storm, they just get so overshadowed by that later block, like the end of your Sun and Moon, when you're talking about your real big heavy hitters with Team Up and Unbroken Bonds. And Unbroken Bonds, there was a lot of Unbroken Bonds printed, and Unbroken Bonds sat low for a long time, and then you go into Unified Minds until eventually Cosmic Eclipse. Like, it's weird when you talk about all these stuff after the fact, because there's just so much of history that constantly repeats itself in so many different sets. And even now, when you fast forward and you think about Sword and Shield, and you say, well, what are the similarities between what happened with Sword and Shield versus what happened with Sun and Moon versus what happened with XY? I think there's a ton of similarities that happen with like these early sets of XY and Sword and Shield. When you think about Sword and Shield, think about like that rarity factor. The real early sets of Sword and Shield base, very lackluster. The same way as I said XY base, very lackluster. Well, XY base, extremely high booster box prices. Sword and Shield, for what you can get inside that booster box, extremely high prices, only because of just the rarity of that booster box. When you talk about single packs of Sword and Shield base was in everything. The same way as Sun and Moon was in everything. The same way as XY was in everything for a while. Sword and Shield base really bucked that trend, but there's a reason why Sword and Shield booster boxes are so expensive, and the reason XY booster boxes are so expensive because of the rarity. But like, that's why when we talk about reprints, we think it's so important, because it really does show you how products will play out in the long term. And even when you remove out of booster boxes and you talk about just the ETBs, and you think about something like, what is your most expensive ETB in all of Sword and Shield? Maybe Evolving Skies is getting close to it when you're not talking about any Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs. So maybe it's Evolving Skies. But besides that, it's Rebel Clash. Rebel Clash is up there as one of the most expensive ETBs of all of Sword and Shield. But why is that? Rebel Clash is not a popular set. In fact, the ETB price, you get 8 packs in an ETB, you get 36 packs in a booster box, but the ETB is almost worth as much as a booster box. Well, why is that? Because when it came to all the Sword and Shield ETBs, the one that got printed the least was Rebel Clash. It's that rarity, the artificial rarity and scarcity of that product. That alone keeps that ETB enough so where the ETB price is almost the equivalent price of the booster box. But then there were later ETBs like, Darkness Ablaze and Vivid Voltage that at the time far outpassed Rebel Clash. When Vivid Voltage ETBs went up to $140. I promise you, Rebel Clash ETBs were not at $140, but what happened was reprints were the death of, Darkness Ablaze and the death of Vivid Voltage ETBs. Those ETBs crashed down because big resupplies came. Rebel Clash, resupplies of ETBs never came, and that is why that price continued to go up. So that's why in today's market, when you have people that are so hyper focused all the time on reprints, is because if you understand reprints, it makes speculating on these products that much easier, because you have a better understanding of how will this product play out in the future. And it all just constantly goes back to amount of supply. We're in the period of Scarlet and Violet right now. There's a lot of Scarlet and Violet sets. We are right now in Scarlet and Violet 6. That is what Twilight Masquerade is, not including specialty sets. So we are 6 sets into Scarlet and Violet. Pokemon's probably not going to go back and reprint all these booster boxes. So now it's your time to try to play that guessing game of, well, what will get reprinted, because the stuff that will get reprinted is probably going to play out the same way every other set has played out in the entire history of this hobby. The one that has the highest supply of reprints will have the lowest stagnation in price for the longest amount of time. But the beautiful thing about Pokemon is, even with a ton of supply, a ton of reprints, this hobby just has this crazy wild way of just making its way through it. But when you go back and you look at the stuff and you say, well, what could have been versus what was, it's really hard to have the what could have been versus what was price and say that the what could have been wasn't always a way higher price. Like Roaring Skies, Roaring Skies made its way back up, recovered all its gains that it lost. But if Roaring Skies was never reprinted, the booster box prices would be astronomically higher than they were. Ultra Prism, if Ultra Prism never got reprints, booster boxes price would be way higher. Unbroken Bond booster boxes for Sun and Moon, when you compare it to Cosmic Eclipse, when you compare it to Team Up, there's a reason why Unbroken Bond booster boxes are like $600 now in comparison to those others, because that reprint happened. But if that reprint never happened of Unbroken Bonds, and maybe that reprint happened of Team Up, when the Team Up reprint never came, but the Unbroken Bonds ones did, well, why would Team Up still be more expensive than Unbroken Bonds? Yes. But would it be so drastically higher? And the answer is probably no. But it's just figuring out, and that's a problem, is a lot of people, they get so upset that people talk about reprints all the time, but it's because throughout the history of this hobby, over and over and over again, those who have speculate on it, those who were right guessing that, they're doing so much better than those who just call it back the wrong pony. A lot of this hobby is when a lot of people go back and they look at what is doing the worst for you, especially when it comes to sealed product. Forget singles. Well, singles is important too, but when it comes to sealed product, when you say, what of your quote-unquote investments are doing worse than any of your other investments, when you go back and say, well, what was the death of that investment? Almost 10 out of 10 times the answer is, well, it just got reprinted. Well, they did a second run of this. And then when you look at stuff that really didn't crash down in price, when you look at something like Evolving Skies, is you go, well, one of the reasons Evolving Skies worked out so well is because when Pokemon could have went back and reprinted it, you keep in mind, there was a long period of time, even after that small final reprint of Evolving Skies came out, a lot of people speculated reprints might come. If any of those reprints ever came, it would have hurt the price, but because they never came is because that product has played out so well as quickly as it did. And that's just the world we live in. It's just figuring out the most crazy, nuanced, deepest down the rabbit hole type stuff. Alright, anyways, guys, do not know, every Thursday night at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I go live. So that's my rant for the first 30 minutes, but I managed to almost rant nonstop for 54 minutes with damn near not taking a breath. I'm done. See PokeKid in the chat. PokeKid, looking forward to meeting you, or not meeting you, seeing you in Charlotte. PokeKid, you were missed in Jersey. I'm hoping to meet. Oh well, not me. I keep saying meet. I met you guys all in the past, but I can't wait to meet Dylan. See him in person. Drutini, good to see you. #1 mod in the game, Drew. Good to see you, bud. Oh, people are saying they're filling out to be a mod. Oh, there's only. I got my mods. I got the #1 mod. I got Basic in the chat. Good to see you. Happy TCG 2424 said, PK, you ready for the new promo Pikachu and Pokemon Center starting the 2nd of August? So that I have so the promo he's talking about, maybe I could find one. So this was last year. Well, this is the Japanese one. You got the Pikachu fighting this Charizard, but last year in English you had the Pikachu in English fighting the Charizard, but it was a Pokemon League promo. So what Happy TCG 2424 is talking about is on August 2nd they're going to be having, it's like the same card, but it's going to have a world stamp on it, and it's the Worlds promo for 2024, and it's Pikachu fighting a Mew. So in this card, he's Pikachu fighting a Charizard. The other card is going to be Pikachu fighting a Mew, but it's going to be pretty mass-produced. You're going to be able to go on Pokemon Center. If you do a qualifying purchase, you're going to be able to pick it up there. Even GameStop's going to have them. It's not going to be a rare promo by any sense of the imagination, but it's still going to be a cool Pikachu artwork fighting a big fan favorite Pokemon in Mew. It's going to have the World's Championships stamp on it. It's going to be a pretty awesome card. So, and at least on Pokemon Center, it's going from August 2nd to August 18th. I don't think it's going to be a card you're going to have to FOMO in, go to every single GameStop and go on PokemonCenter.com, but if you have the ability, you want to pick up some products just to get the promo, I think it's definitely worth it. These cards too, the Pokemon Together promos, like the Pikachu and Eevee, I think they're still available on Pokemon. I picked these up with the 2-pack blisters. It was Battle Styles and a Fusion Strike pack in it, so I was just waiting on like the better bundle deals. But I did see recently they had the Crown Zenith tins, so you get 15 packs. It's like $75, but you get it. So if you want those promos, I do recommend, if you don't have any, probably picking up at least one product on Pokemon Center while those bundle deals are up. It'll be interesting to see where those wind up. I think a lot of the people that speculated on those promos, trying to get them from UK, really got hurt bad on their speculation. Luckily, I was not one of those people, but there's a lot of good promos. Now, are any of these promos Pikachu with a gray felt hat caliber, or any of them special delivery Charizard caliber? No, but it's cool. I mean, they're free, especially like the new Pikachu fighting the Mew promo. Non-holo, probably going to be super easy to grade. You pick up one. It's going to be a free card. You send it away at $15 for bulk to PSA. That's probably going to be a $39, $45 card. So you're going to make a couple bucks just by grading it, and there'll be somebody out there who wants to buy it. That's just part of it. Speaking about cards I couldn't sell on eBay that I sold a ton of in person. Pikachu on the Ball. Pikachu on the Ball, could source them all day for $25, or not 25, for $20 right after they were. So Pikachu on the Ball had 2 major releases. The first release, which wasn't major, was to all like the youth soccer leagues. I think it was like an 8 and up league, or 8 to 10 league. Either way, super rare, super limited release. People were paying upwards of $500+ for one single sealed promo because they were only released at this special UK children's soccer league. And then it ended up eventually becoming a promo at Game, where we in America, we have GameStop. They have something similar, but just called Game, Game. And at the store, as long as you did a purchase of $20 or more, you would get that promo. As soon as that happened, the prices of those Pikachu on the Ball cards crashed down. There was always a little barrier of entry to a card like that because they were only available in the UK. So if you want to at least pick them up in America, it didn't make sense to just buy one. You always had to buy those cards in lots in order to get your shipping price so low, because in order to ship from the UK to America, super high prices. you know, if you were to just hypothetically buy one card, you're looking $15 to $20 just to ship that baby to you. So you had to pick it up in bulk and really get your shipping price down to like $1.50 per card when you talk about it. But you could pick them up as cheap as $20. That's a perfect example of a card that you could pick up a bunch of them at 20, grade them for 15, you made a ton of money on the 10s, and the 9s you broke even, or maybe you lost a couple bucks. Maybe this Pikachu Worlds card will be very similar. You hit a 9, you're gonna break even or lose a couple bucks, but there will still be at least that premium on a 10. That's where you just really got to be a good pre-grader. Let's see. Jade Rabbit with the big advice for the night. He said, everybody hit that like button. If you guys could hit that like button, that's the best thing you could do for this channel. Number 1 said, I collect sign energies from rip and ships. Ooh, that is rough. Kevin Clear said they're using AI to make Pokemon from here on out. That will really, Kevin Clear, that will really change signing events if it's just Chat GPT signing all the cards. Pokemage87 says, who all is going to Charlotte? Excited to see you there, PK. Pokemage, excited to see you too. Only going to be there Saturday during the event though, and I'll be leaving relatively early. So yeah, make sure you come up to me. I'll be walking around. I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of people. Really looking forward to obviously seeing Rusty, one of my good friends in the hobby. And then looking forward to just seeing a lot of people. I talked about PokeKid and Dylan, but a lot of the other people that I've just recently seen in New Jersey. The only problem that's running into Charlotte right now is the same weekend Charlotte Collecticon is going on is the same weekend that Gen Con is going on. So we're going to lose a couple people to Gen Con. We're going to lose Walrus and Old School Pokemon and PokeChef. You know, some of those people are going to Gen Con. So that is unfortunate, and that is just one of those super unlucky things where you'll have two events that really coincide and just people have to make the choice of which one to go to. Let's see. So Kevin Clare says his Walmart is loaded with 151 ETBs. Must have been 100 of them. Wow, that's crazy. He said the same with Lost Origin. I saw Lost Origin ETBs on sale for like 34 and change, I think. So Katie said, PK, I would love to hear what your current strategy is for selling modern booster boxes cases. Do you sell half after it doubles to recoup costs, or does it all individually depend? Definitely individually depends. There was just a couple booster boxes, couple cases that I was really just... I overly speculated on some products and under-speculated on some. Set I always talk about is Chillin' Rain. Chillin' Rain for a while was my biggest position of any modern booster box, and at the same time I was picking up my Chillin' Rain boxes for $79.95. At the exact same day, at the exact same moment, I could have been spending an extra $15 per box and picking up Evolving Skies at $95. So while hindsight being what it is, yeah, you can go back and say, well, even though maybe you didn't make Evolving Skies gains, well, your Chillin' Rain booster boxes still went up. But I had so many Chillin' Rain booster boxes that like I didn't even feel comfortable with the amount I had in. And even though they ended up doing really well, I think I could have performed a little bit better with that money. So that's like one of the things you just have to look at is what makes the most sense for you to do. Does it make sense for you to hold product, or does it make sense for you to sell that product, free up whatever you can, and then try to buy other stuff? Or there's some products where, you know, things sit for a long time and then they have crazy price increases and then they stagnate for a while. Great example being Fusion Strike. Fusion Strike, $80 booster box. Then it sat at that $143 MSRP forever, and then what felt like overnight it sold out on Pokemon Center, and next thing you know it was a $225 booster box for Fusion Strike. But now, what has Fusion Strike really done since then? Before I ask too much, like let's look at Fusion Strike TCG. Let's see what TCG player Fusion Strike booster box, because I have a feeling that Fusion Strike has been pretty stagnant for a while. I could be wrong. That's why I want to. So Fusion Strike booster boxes for the last 6 months, you have it's exactly what I mean, I got to share the screen because this is exactly what I was worried about. It's just stagnation because you saw the big gains and then it just stops. But let me see if I could pull this up. So there you go. This is the last 6-month chart of Fusion Strike. So you literally had where it was $80. Then I told you it sat at that MSRP price, so that 143. But obviously TCG player is always a little bit higher, so 160 price range. It sat there for a while, and if we could go do the 1 year chart, it's even better. So it sat at MSRP forever. This is a 1 year chart. MSRP, MSRP, and then overnight, boom, price just skyrocketed. What did I say? 225. Here we go. Went up to 224. And then what has it done since then? Here we are. A couple months later, it's gone up a little bit. It's, you know, you could pick up one right now for 230. I don't know why it says market price 242 and you could pick up 3 of them at 230 a piece. But anyways, 225 stagnant for the last couple months. So like this is one of those products that when Katie asks a question is like, when do you know to sell? It's like, well, when you're sitting on Fusion Strike, it's sitting, it's doing nothing. Then it has this huge parabolic price and it goes from your MSRP and then almost what felt like overnight at the time, it goes to 225. That was probably a good indicator for a lot of people that, hey, this thing might sit at 225 for a little while. And look what happened. From March to July, it hasn't done shit. So, like, you just got to look at stuff like that and say, does it make sense to sell it? So, it's hard to answer the question, Katie. So, it's always on, like, a product-by-product basics. We got old Danny Catch-em-all Collectibles in the chat. Dan, I just saw you very recently at Jersey. Always great to see Dan. Dan's one of the brothers from another mother. But I can't wait to see Dan and Charlotte again. Charlotte's always a good time. It is sad, like I said, that we are missing out on some people. But let's see. So Dan said, in the convention center, too much bad location talk. Be in 6th floor, you can find anyone quick. Yes. Basics training. Basic trainer is trolling. Let's see. Scroll down. I'm sorry if I'm skipping a lot of stuff. I do have to wrap this live up relatively quick. Let's see. Oh. So Tom B says it's funny. My worst investments have been Pokemon Center ETBs as of right now. And those typically are pretty scarce. That's interesting. Because, I mean, that's interesting. I want to say that's your worst investment. So your Vavin Sky's Pokemon Center ETBs really are doing super, super well. Vavin Skies, I'm looking on TCG Player. Skies, Pokemon Center ETBs. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, Pokemon Center exclusive Evolving Skies ETBs. Let's look at some of these prices. Because I am surprised, because I've done pretty decent on Pokemon Center ETBs. So, Evolving Skies, $430 for the pair. Let's look at Crown Zenith. Pokemon Center ETB. So, Crown Zenith, I mean, 119. Dude, I'm gonna give you some credit, man, that these are your worst investments. You're doing pretty good on your other stuff. Pokemon 51, Pokemon Center. I'm curious what the 151 So Pokemon Center 151, ETBs 133. Not bad. Even modern set. What is a Scarlet and Violet base? Let's see. Scarlet and Violet base Pokemon Center. Let's see what Scarlet and Violet base Pokemon Center ETBs. So the red ones you would be stagnant, but the purple one is up a little bit, $85. That's not terrible. Hey man, it could be worse. The fact that some of your worst performers are, I mean, you're doing pretty good. Okay. I am getting better at like looking at the prices. Grimer Collect says Shrouded Fable ETBs at play. I don't know about that. Let's see. So Al Well said PK thoughts on the Together promo Pikachu and Eevee Pokemon Center right now. I just showed you. This is all I got so far is 3 of each, so 6 in total. 3 of the Eevee, 3 of the Pikachus. I think there's going to be a lot of them, but it's going to be super easy to grade. People love little stamps. I say go for it. They're free, right? So just be careful what you're buying. If you're buying bundles just to get the promos, buy the good bundles. Buy the Crown Zenith bundle. Buy the... I know you're going to hear me say it, is buy the Fusion Strike and Battle Styles with the little pin. I got the pins right over here. Here's my... This is out of my trash right now. These were all the... I opened them all, like, to get the pins out and get the packs out. Buy those, you know. You could work your way selling packs. I mean, obviously, Battle Styles is pretty rough right now, but Fusion Strike's okay. You get you some of your money out of the packs. You get your promos, you sell your pin, you'll do okay. So my thoughts are, pick them up. If you don't have any, at least pick up one, just so you can say you have it. Let's see, people are giving #1 mod out in the game a shot, yeah. Let's see. So Nicholas says everyone thinks sold out means to the moon. Not necessarily the case. True. Sometimes the case, but not always the case. There are definitely some products that are sold out, and that does not mean that they went to the moon. Alright guys, as always, I wish I could go for a little bit longer tonight, but I cannot. I have stuff I have to do tonight before bed, but I'm going to the museum with the wife and kids tomorrow, so that will be fun. But as always guys, listen, appreciate every single one of you. Do me a favor right before you turn off this video. If you haven't already turned off, just do me a favor, hit that like button. If you're new to this channel, you made it to the end of an hour and 12-minute long live. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. I appreciate it. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. For everybody else out there, I'll catch you on the next video.